flight attendant's voice cracked over the speakers. "Security to gate 47. We have a situation." Amara Okonkwo pressed a hand to her swollen belly as the Korean man standing over her ripped her first-class boarding pass in half. "You don't belong here," he snarled, loud enough for the whole cabin to hear. "People like you sit in the back." Months pregnant. Husband stuck in the terminal, completely alone. What this man didn't know would destroy his entire world in the next 6 hours. But first, he was going to destroy hers. If you're watching this story unfold, take a moment to subscribe to this channel and hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I'd love to know who's joining me on this journey. Now, let me tell you what happened next, because nothing could have prepared anyone for where this story goes. The passengers around them shifted uncomfortably. Some pulled out their phones, recording. Others looked away, that particular kind of cowardice that masquerades as minding one's own business. A child in row 3 started crying, and his mother hushed him while stealing glances at the confrontation. Amara had faced racism before. Growing up black in Chicago, then navigating corporate America, then moving to Seoul to marry the love of her life, she had collected wounds the way others collected stamps. But something about this moment felt different. Heavier. Final. The flight attendant said, approaching cautiously.
"Sir,
I need you to show me your boarding pass." Man, tall, sharp-featured, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, smiled the smile of someone who had never been told no. He pulled out his phone and showed a digital ticket. 3A first class, window seat. He gestured toward Amara without looking at her, as if she were furniture that had been misplaced. "Obviously there's been a mistake. Check her ticket." I already checked her ticket, sir.
Mrs. Park has seat
3A, you have 3B.
You have 3B.
The transformation on his face was immediate. The smile collapsed into something ugly, something raw. "Park, her name is Park." Amara finally spoke, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "My husband's name and my seat. You're welcome to take yours, Mr. Choi Sungjin." He said it like a weapon, like the name itself should make her cower. "Vice President of Hana Financial Group, and I don't sit in middle seats. Especially not next to." He stopped himself, but everyone heard the word he didn't say. The silence that followed was suffocating. Amara had learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting. But she had also learned that some battles, if you walked away from them, would follow you forever. Her daughter kicked again, harder this time, as if urging her mother to stand her ground. "In your seat, Mr. Choi," Amara said quietly. "Or don't fly." Something flickered behind his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or the first crack in his certainty. Men like him weren't accustomed to being challenged. Especially not by women, especially not by black women, especially not on planes where he assumed his wealth made him untouchable. He leaned closer, and she could smell expensive cologne mixed with something sour, the scent of a man who had drunk too much at the airport lounge. "You think because you married some Korean fool you belong here." His voice dropped to a whisper meant only for her. "You'll always be an outsider." And that child, neither Korean nor American, nowhere, nothing. Words pierced deeper than any physical blow could have. Amara's hand moved to her belly again, protective, fierce. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of him. Not while cameras recorded every second of her humiliation. The flight attendant, a young woman named Kim Soo-young, according to her name tag, stepped between them. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was firm. "Mr. Choi, I'm going to have to ask you to take your assigned seat or deplane. This is your final warning." Choi Sungjin laughed, actually laughed as if the entire situation were a comedy performance staged for his amusement. Do you know who I am? Do you know who I know? One phone call and you'll be serving drinks on cargo flights for the rest of your career. He pulled out his phone again, this time scrolling through contacts.
Let's call your CEO
right now. Let's see how fast you change your tune. What happened next would be replayed on news stations across 2 continents. A voice came from 3 rows back, calm and cold as winter steel. "You should stop talking." Everyone turned. An elderly Korean woman was rising from her seat. She was small, perhaps 5 feet tall, with silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun. Her clothes were simple, a dark wool coat, a silk scarf, but something about the way she carried herself silenced the cabin. Choi Sungjin squinted at her. "Excuse me." "This doesn't concern you, grandmother. Sit down." Woman walked forward, each step deliberate until she stood directly in front of him. She studied his face the way a scientist might study a particularly disappointing specimen. "Choi Sungjin," she said. "Hana Financial Group, I know your father, I knew your grandfather. They would be ashamed of what stands before me now." Color drained from his face. Who are you?" someone who remembers when the Choi family had nothing. When your grandfather came to my husband begging for his first loan, when your father built his company on foundations laid by our generosity. She paused, letting the words sink in. But that's not important right now. What's important is that you just threatened my daughter-in-law and my grandchild. Cabin erupted in whispers. Amara's heart stopped. Daughter-in-law, she had never met Jae-hoon's mother. In 3 years of marriage, Park Myung-hee had refused every invitation, rejected every olive branch, sent back every gift unopened. Jae-hoon had wept over it, had begged his mother to accept his wife, had finally accepted that some wounds might never heal. And now here she was, on the same flight, watching a stranger try to steal her seat, watching her daughter-in-law face hatred alone. Choi Sung-jin's arrogance crumbled like wet paper. "Mrs. Park, I didn't know, I would never." "You didn't know." The old woman's voice could have frozen flames. "You didn't know that decent human beings don't treat pregnant women this way. You needed to know who her family was before you could find basic respect." He had no answer. The silence stretched until it became its own kind of violence.
Sit down. In your seat.
Mrs. Park said.
In
your seat. In the middle. And if I hear your voice again during this flight, I will personally ensure that Hana Financial Group loses every contract they have with Park Industries. Do you understand? He understood. The great Choi Sung-jin, vice president of Hana Financial Group, sat in his middle seat like a scolded child. He didn't look at anyone. He didn't speak. For the next 14 hours, he would stare at the seat in front of him, replaying the moment his life began to unravel. But that confrontation was only the beginning. The old woman turned to Amara, and her expression shifted into something unreadable. Not warmth, exactly. Not welcome. Something more complicated, more painful. "We should talk," Mrs. Park said. "After we land." Then she returned to her seat without another word. The plane took off, and Amara sat in her window seat, watching Seoul shrink beneath the clouds, carrying questions that burned hotter than any hatred she had faced. Why was her mother-in-law on this flight? Why had she never made contact? Why had she defended Amara against a stranger but rejected her for 3 years? And what did she want now? The flight attendant brought Amara a blanket and a cup of warm tea. The same young woman, Kim Soo-young, leaned close and whispered, "You handled that with grace. I'm sorry I didn't intervene sooner." "You did what you could." "He'll face consequences. The airline takes incidents like this seriously." Amara nodded, but she knew better. Men like Choi Sung-jin had been facing consequences their entire lives, consequences that somehow never quite touched them, that always seemed to bounce off their wealth and connections and dissolve into nothing. She was wrong about that, too. But she wouldn't discover how wrong until the plane landed. The hours crawled by. Amara tried to sleep, but her mind kept circling back to the woman 3 rows behind her. Jae-hoon's mother. The woman who had refused to attend their wedding. The woman who had written a letter. Jae-hoon had shown it to her once, in tears, saying that her son was dead to her until he came to his senses. What had changed? Why now the baby kicked, and Amara whispered to her in the darkness of the cabin, "Whatever happens, I'll protect you. I promise." Somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, Choi Sung-jin's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his face went white, then it buzzed again. And again, and again. He began scrolling frantically, his breathing becoming shallow, his perfectly manicured fingers trembling against the screen. Whatever he was reading was destroying him in real time, Amara noticed. So did several other passengers. The man who had tried to steal her seat, who had whispered poison about her child, was watching something collapse on his phone screen. She should have felt satisfaction. Instead, she felt only exhaustion. The flight attendant approached Choi Sung-jin to offer him a beverage. He looked up at her with eyes that had lost something essential, confidence, perhaps, or the illusion of invincibility. "Water," he croaked. "Just water." When she brought it, his hands shook so badly that he spilled it across his expensive suit. He didn't seem to notice. Amara turned away. Whatever was happening to him, she wanted no part of it. Her battle was over. She had won her seat, kept her dignity, and discovered that her mother-in-law had been watching from 3 rows back. That last fact terrified her more than anything Choi Sung-jin had said, because mothers-in-law didn't appear on flights by coincidence. They didn't defend daughters-in-law they had rejected for years without reason. They didn't say, "We should talk," without having something specific to say. Jae-hoon had warned her once about his mother's strategic mind. "She plays chess with people's lives," he had said. "Every move calculated, every sacrifice planned. She's been doing it since my father died, since she had to take over the company at 32 with a 5-year-old son and a board of directors who wanted to push her out. She won, Amara. She always wins, but the winning changed her. Amara had asked what she was like before. Jae-hoon had gone quiet for a long moment before answering. Warm, he had said finally. She was warm. Plane jolted through turbulence, and Amara's hand flew to her belly again. The baby settled, apparently unbothered by the movement that made her mother's heart race. 5 hours left until landing. 5 hours until she faced whatever waited on the ground. 5 hours until she learned why Park Myung-hee had finally appeared, after 3 years of silence, on a flight that would change everything. What Amara didn't know, couldn't know, was that the videos from the plane were already spreading across Korean social media. Someone had captured Choi Sung-jin's harassment. Someone else had recorded Mrs. Park's intervention. The footage was being shared, commented on, analyzed, and it was reaching the wrong people, or perhaps, depending on perspective, exactly the right ones. In Seoul, in a glass-walled office overlooking the Han River, a man watched the video on his computer screen. He watched it 3 times, studying every detail, every facial expression, every word. Then he picked up his phone and made a call. "We have a problem," he said. "Sung-jin lost control. On a plane, it's everywhere." Voice on the other end was calm, measured, betraying nothing. "How bad?" He attacked a pregnant woman, tried to steal her seat, called her, well, you can imagine what he called her. Silence. Then, who was she? "That's the problem. That's why I'm calling. She's Park Jae-hoon's wife." More silence. This time it stretched so long that the man in the office began to sweat. "Find out everything about her," the voice finally said. "Everything, and find out why Myung-hee was on that plane." "Park was on the plane," she defended the woman, threatened Sung-jin with business consequences. "It's in the video." Man in the office loosened his tie. This was worse than he had thought, much worse. "What do you want me to do?" "Nothing yet, just watch. And when they land, I want to know every move they make." Call ended. Thousands of miles away, the plane carrying Amara, her mother-in-law, and the man who had just destroyed his career, continued its journey across the Pacific. None of them knew they were being watched. None of them knew that forces much larger than a stolen seat were already in motion. And none of them knew that by the time this flight landed, 3 lives would be shattered beyond repair, 1 family would be reunited, and 1 empire would begin to crumble. The attendant announced that they were beginning their descent into Los Angeles. Amara's phone buzzed. Jae-hoon, finally able to reach her after the communication blackout of international flight. "Are you okay? I saw the videos. I'm on the next flight out. My mother, Amara, I don't understand why she was there. Please, please be careful. Something is happening. Something I can't explain yet. I love you. I love our daughter. Whatever she says, whatever she offers, please wait for me before you decide anything." Decide anything. Amara read the message 3 times, her confusion deepening with each pass. What decision was she supposed to be making? She looked back, toward row 6, where her mother-in-law sat with her eyes closed, apparently sleeping. But something about the woman's stillness felt deliberate, performed, like a predator pretending to rest while waiting for prey to let down its guard. The wheels touched down, the cabin lights flickered on. And as passengers began to gather their belongings, Amara felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned. Mrs. Park stood beside her, smaller than Amara had imagined, older, with eyes that held decades of battles won and lost. "Before we go through customs," the old woman said quietly, "there's something you need to know, something my son doesn't know, something that will change how you understand everything." Amara's heart hammered against her ribs. "What is it, Mrs.?" Park glanced toward Choi Sung-jin, who was still sitting in his seat, staring at nothing, broken in a way that went beyond embarrassment. "That man," Mrs. Park said, "is not the enemy you think he is. He's a puppet. Someone sent him. Someone who knows exactly who you are, who my son is, and who your daughter will become. I don't understand." "You will." Mrs. Park's grip on her shoulder tightened. "But first, you need to understand why I'm here, why I've been watching you for 3 years. Why I rejected you publicly but protected you privately. Why I let my own son believe I hated his wife." Amara couldn't breathe. "Tell me, Mrs." Park's eyes glistened with something that might have been tears, or might have been the cold light of calculation. "Because someone is trying to kill my grandchild, and I needed them to believe I didn't care whether she lived or died." The words landed like a physical blow. Amara staggered backward, catching herself on the seat. Her hand flew to her belly where her daughter who someone wanted dead, kicked as if in protest. "What did you just say, Mrs.?" Park's expression didn't waver. Not here. We'll be watched the moment we step off this plane. There's a car waiting in the parking structure, level 3 black Hyundai Genesis. The driver's name is Kang. He's one of mine. We have approximately 7 minutes before whoever is monitoring the flight realizes we've made contact. I'm not going anywhere with you. Amara's voice cracked. I don't know you. You've spent 3 years treating my husband like he doesn't exist, and now you expect me to trust you with some story about someone wanting to hurt my baby. I expect you to survive. Mrs. Park moved closer, lowering her voice until it was barely audible. Listen to me very carefully. In 6 hours, you were supposed to receive news that your husband's company has been seized by the government. In 12 hours, your assets were supposed to be frozen. In 24 hours, you were supposed to be deported, alone, penniless, pregnant, back to a country where you have no support system. Amara's world tilted. That's insane. Jae-hoon hasn't done anything wrong. Park Industries is clean. Yes, I know. I've spent 30 years building that company into something that couldn't be touched. Mrs. Park's jaw tightened. But 3 months ago, someone planted evidence, fabricated documents, created a paper trail showing illegal weapons manufacturing, money laundering, connections to North Korean operatives. All of it false, all of it convincing enough to destroy us. Plane was emptying around them. Passengers shuffled past, stealing curious glances at the two women locked in intense conversation. Choi Sung-jin remained seated, a man waiting for an execution he knew was coming. Why would anyone do this? Amara whispered. Because of what's in my will. Mrs. Park's eyes bore into hers. Because of what I'm leaving to my grandchildren. Because there are people who would burn entire cities to prevent a half-black, half-Korean child from inheriting controlling shares in one of Korea's largest technology conglomerates. The pieces began clicking into place. Horrible, impossible pieces that formed a picture Amara had never imagined. Your will. You're leaving the company to Jae-hoon's children. All of them. Equally. Regardless of what country their mothers come from. Regardless of what color their skin is. Mrs. Park's voice carried a weight of exhaustion and determination intertwined. My late husband's family has fought me on this for decades. They believe Park Industries belongs to pure Korean blood. They believed Jae-hoon would eventually marry someone they approved of. When he married you instead, they decided to take more drastic measures. The extended family, they're the ones who, not all of them, mostly one man. My brother-in-law, Park D-young. He controls the family council, the trust, the voting shares that I don't personally own. He spent the last 3 years building a case to have Jae-hoon removed from succession entirely. Your marriage gave him ammunition. Your pregnancy gave him urgency. And your daughter, your beautiful, innocent daughter, gave him a deadline. Amara felt tears burning her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage. You could have told us. You could have warned Jae-hoon. Instead, you let him think his own mother hated his wife, hated his choices, hated. If I had told him, he would have confronted D-young directly. My son is brilliant, but he has his father's temper. He would have tipped our hand, revealed that we knew about the plot, and they would have accelerated their timeline. The only way to protect you was to make everyone believe I had abandoned you, including you. Logic was brutal, cold, and horrifyingly sound. Videos from today, Amara said slowly. From the plane, someone recorded everything, including you defending me. Yes, which means my cover is blown, which means they now know I've been protecting you, which means everything I've spent 3 years building is about to be tested. Mrs. Park finally showed something that looked like fear. We have perhaps 6 minutes now. Make your choice, Amara. Come with me and learn the full truth, or walk through those doors alone and face whatever's waiting for you. Amara looked toward the front of the plane, where passengers were still filing out, where airport security and customs agents and normal life waited beyond the jetway. She looked at Choi Sung-jin, still frozen in his seat. She looked at Mrs. Park, her mother-in-law, her secret protector, the woman who had pretended to hate her in order to save her. What about him? Amara nodded toward Choi. He was supposed to provoke you into causing a scene, get you detained by the airline. Create a record of unstable behavior that could be used against you in deportation proceedings. Mrs. Park's lip curled. He didn't know the full plan, of course. He's just a useful idiot who owed favors to the wrong people. What he did today will cost him everything he has. You're going to destroy him. I already have. While you were watching him fall apart during the flight, I was making phone calls. Hana Financial Group's stock is dropping as we speak. By morning, he'll be under investigation for harassment, his career will be over, and his family will be scrambling to distance themselves from him. The casual brutality of it stole Amara's breath. Is that what you'll do to anyone who threatens me? Destroy them? Mrs. Park met her eyes without flinching. I would burn down the entire country if it meant protecting my grandchild. Do you understand? There is nothing I won't do, no line I won't cross, no mercy I won't withhold. That child in your belly is the future of everything I've built, everything my husband died protecting, everything my son doesn't yet realize he's fighting for. She paused. So yes, Amara, that is exactly what I will do to anyone who threatens you. Weight of those words settled over Amara like armor. She had spent 3 years believing she was alone in this country, believing that her husband loved her but his family never would. Believing that her daughter would grow up carrying the burden of being unwanted, she had been wrong about everything. Come with you, Amara said quietly. But I need to call Jae-hoon. He needs to know. He can't know yet. Not until we're somewhere secure. The moment he learns the truth, he'll do something reckless, and I can't protect both of you if you're in different places making different decisions. You're asking me to lie to my husband. Asking you to keep him alive. Mrs. Park's voice cracked for the first time. Please, I've already lost my husband to these people. I can't lose my son too. Something in that plea, the rawness of it, the terror lurking beneath the composure, convinced Amara in a way no argument could have. Do we get past the people watching the flight? We don't. We let them see us leave separately. I go first through the main terminal. You go second through the crew exit. Soo-young will take you. We meet at the car in exactly 18 minutes. The flight attendant, she's mine, has been for 5 years. Her father works in my security division. She volunteered for this assignment when we learned you would be on this flight. Amara's head spun. How deep did this go? How many people had been watching over her without her knowledge? Go, Mrs. Park said. 18 minutes, don't be late. The old woman walked off the plane without looking back. Amara stood alone in the empty first-class cabin, her hand on her belly, her mind racing through everything she had just learned. Someone wanted her daughter dead. Her mother-in-law had been protecting her for 3 years. Her husband's family was at war with itself. And she had just agreed to follow a woman she barely knew into a situation she didn't understand. The flight attendant, Soo-young, appeared at her side. Park, we need to move. I know. They walked toward the back of the plane, through the empty economy section, past rows of abandoned magazines and forgotten headphones. The crew door waited at the rear, leading to stairs that descended directly to the tarmac. I need to ask you something, Amara said as they walked. Yes. Why didn't you tell me who you were? When that man was threatening me when I was alone, why didn't you just say, I work for your mother-in-law, you're safe? Soo-young was quiet for a moment. Because the other passengers were watching. Because anyone could have heard, and because, she hesitated. Because you didn't need saving, you stood your ground without help. You kept your dignity without anyone holding your hand. Mrs. Park wanted to see what you would do when no one was coming to rescue you. Was testing me. She was confirming what she already believed, that her son made the right choice, that her grandchild will be raised by someone with spine. They reached the crew door. Soo-young pushed it open, and warm Lowe's Angel's air rushed in, carrying the smell of jet fuel and approaching summer. 14 minutes, Soo-young said. Level 3, Black Hyundai, go. Amara went. She descended the stairs, walked across the tarmac with her head down, followed the route Soo-young had whispered to her. Ground crew members glanced at her but didn't stop her. She was wearing the airline blazer Soo-young had given her, carrying a crew badge that wouldn't withstand close inspection but looked convincing enough from a distance. Her heart pounded with every step. She thought about Jae-hoon, somewhere over the Pacific, racing to reach her. She thought about her daughter, innocent of the war being fought over her existence. She thought about the mother-in-law who had pretended to hate her and the uncle who apparently wanted her dead. She reached the parking structure level 3, Black Hyundai Genesis. The car was there. A man stood beside it, mid-50s, solid build, face that revealed nothing. Park? Yes. Kang, please get in. She got in. The back seat was leather, cool against her skin. Mrs. Park was already there, phone pressed to her ear, speaking rapid Korean too fast for Amara to follow. Kang pulled out of the parking structure. They merged into airport traffic, becoming anonymous among hundreds of other black sedans. Mrs. Park ended her call. Situation is escalating faster than I anticipated. Di-young knows. He knows I intervened on the plane, he knows we're together, and he's already making moves. What kind of moves? Jae-hoon's flight just got diverted. Mechanical issues. He won't land in Lowe's Angels. He'll land in San Francisco, where Di-young has people waiting. Amara's blood went cold. What people? What are they going to do to him? They won't hurt him, not physically, not yet. They need him cooperative for what comes next. Mrs. Park's expression darkened. Di-young wants Jae-hoon to sign documents, voluntarily transfer his shares, dissolve his trust, renounce his claim to Park Industries in exchange for a quiet settlement. Jae-hoon would never. Jae-hoon would do anything to protect you and your daughter. Anything. If Di-young threatens your safety convincingly enough, my son will sign whatever papers they put in front of him. The car sped up, weaving through traffic with a precision that suggested Kang had done this many times before. Where are we going? Somewhere safe. Somewhere I control completely. Somewhere we can plan our next move without being watched or listened to. What is our next move, Mrs. Park turned to face her fully. In the shifting light from passing street lamps, she looked older than before, more human, more afraid. We're going to take back everything they've stolen from us. But to do that, I need to tell you the full story, about my husband's death, about Di-young's betrayal, about why your daughter is so dangerous to them. She paused. About the $5 billion that will belong to her the day she's born. Amara's breath caught. $5 billion. Dollars, not $1. It's why they can't just wait us out. It's why they've become so desperate. It's why, if we don't stop them in the next 72 hours, they will find a way to make sure your daughter never takes her first breath. The words hung in the air, obscene in their directness. If you're still watching this story unfold, I need you to pause and do something for me. Leave a comment right now telling me what you think Mrs. Park is going to reveal next. Is she telling the truth about everything? Does she have her own agenda? And don't forget to like this video if this story is making your heart race. I want to know I'm not alone in being completely gripped by what happens next. The car drove through the night, carrying two women bound by blood they didn't share, united by an enemy they hadn't chosen, racing toward a truth that would change everything. And somewhere over the Pacific, Jae-hoon sat in a plane that was supposed to take him to his wife, but would deliver him instead to his uncle's trap. He didn't know yet. He was looking at photos of Amara, of her pregnant belly, of the nursery they had painted together in soft yellows and greens. He was thinking about the future. He didn't know that the future was already being rewritten without his consent. The Genesis pulled off the highway, heading toward the hills of Malibu. The houses grew larger, the gates more imposing, the distance between neighbors wider. This was the land of people who could afford privacy, who had secrets worth keeping, who trusted walls and guards and distance to protect them from the world. We're almost there, Mrs. Park said. Where is there, exactly? My husband's American estate. He bought it 40 years ago when we were young, when we still believed we could escape the family expectations and live ordinary lives. Her voice softened with memory. We spent 3 summers here, just us and Jae-hoon. Before the business consumed everything. Before Di-young decided he deserved what my husband had built. Before she stopped. Before what? Before they killed him, made it look like a heart attack. Poisoned his medication with something that wouldn't show in an autopsy. I only found out 5 years later when a dying man confessed to me what he had been paid to do. Amara felt sick. What did you do to him? The man who confessed? I held his hand while he died. And then I started planning my revenge. Mrs. Park's face showed nothing. It takes a long time to dismantle an empire from the inside. It takes patience and acting and pretending to be weak while you sharpen knives in the dark. I've been sharpening knives for 15 years, Amara. And now, because of my granddaughter, the time has come to use them. Car pulled through a gate, massive, iron, opening automatically at their approach. A long driveway wound through mature trees before revealing a house that was more fortress than home. This is where we make our stand, Mrs. Park said. This is where we either win everything or lose everything. And this is where you need to decide how far you're willing to go. What do you mean? The car stopped. Mrs. Park turned to face her fully. I mean that saving your daughter, saving your husband, saving everything we love, it's going to require us to destroy people. Not just stop them, destroy them. Their careers, their families, their legacies. I need to know if you can live with that. I need to know if you can watch men who tried to kill your child lose everything they have and feel nothing but satisfaction. Amara thought about Choi Sung-jin's face on the plane. The arrogance. The cruelty. The words he had whispered about her daughter belonging nowhere. Being nothing. She thought about the uncle who wanted her baby dead because of what she might inherit. She thought about the father-in-law she had never met, poisoned by someone he trusted. She thought about Jae-hoon, somewhere in the sky, flying toward a trap, and she made her choice. Tell me everything, Amara said. Tell me every name, every secret, every weapon we have, and then tell me how we burn them down. Park smiled for the first time. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a woman who had finally found the daughter she had always wanted. "Come inside," she said. "We have work to do." They stepped out of the car, and somewhere in San Francisco, Jae-hoon's plane began its descent toward an ambush he didn't know was waiting. The house revealed itself in stages, each room more stunning than the last, each corner holding evidence of a life that had been paused rather than ended. Family photographs lined the hallways. Jae-hoon as a child, gap-toothed and laughing. Mr. and Mrs. Park on their wedding day, young and luminous. Holidays and vacations and ordinary moments preserved in frames. But Amara noticed something else. In every photograph, someone had been carefully cut out. She stopped before a large family portrait, Jae-hoon perhaps 10 years old, standing between his parents in front of a Christmas tree. Where a fourth figure should have been, there was only an awkward gap, a conspicuous absence. Who was removed? Mrs. Park didn't look at the photograph. Di-young. He was in every family picture until the day I discovered what he had done to my husband. Then I erased him. Every photograph, every document, every memory, I wanted no evidence that he had ever been part of our lives. He's your brother-in-law. He's been at every business function, every board meeting, pretending to be loyal, pretending to be family, waiting for his chance. Mrs. Park continued walking. The study is this way. Everything you need to understand is there. They entered a room that smelled of old books and expensive leather. One wall was covered entirely with a diagram, names, photographs, connecting lines, dates, annotations. It looked like something from a crime investigation, and Amara realized with a chill that it was. 15 years of evidence, Mrs. Park said. 15 years of patient gathering, careful documentation, building a case that would be undeniable when the time came to use it. Amara moved closer to the wall, her eyes scanning the web of information. She recognized some faces, Korean business leaders she had seen at company events, politicians Jae-hoon had pointed out, executives from Park Industries. And in the center, connected to everything, a photograph of a man with silver hair and cold eyes. "Park Di-young," she said. "My husband's younger brother. When we married, he was charming, supportive. He helped build the company, took positions below his brother even though he was brilliant in his own right." Everyone praised his humility, his loyalty, his devotion to family. Mrs. Park's voice hardened. "It was all performance. Every kind word, every supportive gesture. He was studying us, learning our weaknesses, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. What did he want? What all men like him want. Everything. My husband founded Park Industries with a breakthrough in semiconductor technology, a process that made chips faster, cheaper, better than anything else on the market. Within 10 years, we were supplying half of Asia's tech manufacturing. Within 20, we were global. The family wealth became immeasurable." Amara studied the lines connecting Di-young to other faces. "But your husband was the founder, the controlling shareholder. And as long as he lived, Di-young would never be more than a lieutenant. A very well-compensated, very powerful lieutenant, but never the king." Mrs. Park touched her husband's photograph gently. "So he decided to become one." Story unfolded with the precision of a legal brief. Mrs. Park had clearly told it many times, at least to herself, sharpening each detail until it cut like glass. Di-young had begun by cultivating allies on the board, executives who felt overlooked, family members who resented their positions, anyone susceptible to the idea that they deserved more. He had funded secret investments, created shadow companies, built a network of influence that operated just beneath the surface of Park Industries' legitimate business. When the poison finally came, it was administered by someone everyone trusted, the family physician, Dr. Yoon, who had been treating the Park family for 2 decades. "He put something in the heart medication," Mrs. Park said flatly. "Something undetectable in a standard autopsy. My husband had been having chest pains for months, normal for a man in his 60s under enormous stress. When he collapsed at a board meeting and died on the way to the hospital, everyone assumed it was natural causes. I assumed it was natural causes. I grieved like a widow who had lost her best friend to ordinary tragedy. How did you find out the truth, doctor? Yoon developed cancer. Lung cancer, aggressive, no treatment available. He was dying and he wanted to die with a clear conscience." Mrs. Park's jaw tightened. "He called me to his hospital bed, told me everything. The payments Di-young had made, the compound he had used, the way they had planned it for months, waiting for the perfect moment. He wept like a child, begging for forgiveness. I told him I forgave him. No, but he needed to believe I did, so he would tell me everything. Names, dates, amounts, methods. I recorded it all on my phone while holding his hand and promising him peace. Mrs. Park's expression didn't waver. He died 3 hours later, and I began building my case. Amara felt nauseated, not at the deception, but at the world that had made such deception necessary. She had entered a place where morality bent like light through water, where the choices were never between good and evil but between different kinds of terrible. Why didn't you go to the police, the prosecutors, if you had evidence of murder? Do you know what happened when my husband died? Who came to the funeral? The president of South Korea, half the National Assembly, CEOs from every major corporation in Asia, military generals and intelligence chiefs and ambassadors from a dozen countries. Mrs. Park laughed bitterly. Park Industries isn't just a company, Amara. It's a pillar of the Korean economy. It's a national security asset. It's too big to face scandal. If I had accused De-young publicly with evidence, do you know what would have happened? Tell me. The stock would have collapsed. Tens of thousands of jobs would have been lost. International contracts would have been canceled. Other governments would have questioned whether they could trust Korean manufacturing. The damage would have been catastrophic, not just for our family, but for the country. So you stayed silent, stayed strategic. I let De-young believe he had won. I let him take positions of greater power, make himself indispensable, become so confident in his untouchability that he stopped being careful. Mrs. Park moved to another section of the wall, and I gathered evidence of his other crimes, not just my husband's murder. I knew that alone wouldn't be enough. I gathered evidence of bribery, embezzlement, fraud, securities violations, foreign corruption, connections to organized crime. Enough crimes to fill a prison, documented so thoroughly that no amount of influence could make it disappear. 15 years of evidence, Amara repeated, understanding now the magnitude of what she was looking at. 15 years of patience. And I was almost ready to use it, almost ready to destroy him, when Jae-hoon met you. The words hit differently than Amara expected. What does that have to do with anything? Everything. Mrs. Park turned to face her. Before you, Jae-hoon had been living the life De-young expected, dating Korean women from appropriate families, focusing on the business, being groomed for eventual leadership under De-young's guidance. My son is brilliant, but he was also naive. He trusted his uncle. He had no idea what lurked beneath the surface. Then he met me. Then he fell in love with you, despite everything, despite the pressure, despite knowing it would cause problems. And when he announced he was going to marry you, a black woman, an American, someone completely outside the acceptable boundaries, everything changed. Air in the study felt heavier. De-young saw an opportunity, Amara said, pieces falling into place. If Jae-hoon married someone the family would reject, someone who could be portrayed as unsuitable, then De-young could position himself as the defender of tradition, the protector of the Park legacy. He could turn the entire family council against Jae-hoon, frame your marriage as evidence of poor judgment, argue that Jae-hoon was unfit to lead. Mrs. Park's expression grew pained. And if you happened to become pregnant, if there was suddenly an heir who represented everything the old guard feared, then the attacks would escalate. They already have. The fabricated evidence I mentioned, the accusations of weapons manufacturing and money laundering, that's all designed to accomplish one thing: discredit Jae-hoon so thoroughly that when I die, my will can be challenged, contested, tied up in courts for years while De-young takes control of everything. The will, you said it leaves the company to Jae-hoon's children. To his children equally, including your daughter, including any child he might have with anyone. The language is deliberate, designed to prevent exactly the kind of exclusionary thinking that has poisoned Korean business families for generations. Mrs. Park moved back to the central photograph. When your daughter is born, she becomes a legal heir to Park Industries. Not a potential heir, a legal one. Entitled to shares, entitled to seats on boards, entitled to participate in decision-making about a company worth tens of billions of dollars. De-young can't allow that. Would rather watch the company burn than share it with your daughter. Mrs. Park's voice dropped. That's not an exaggeration, Amara. I've seen the communications. I've listened to recordings my people have obtained. He has discussed in plain language to people who work for him, ensuring that your pregnancy resolves itself before the birth. Clinical phrase, resolves itself, made Amara's blood freeze. He wants to kill my baby. Wants to remove an obstacle to his ambitions. In his mind, your daughter isn't a person. She's an inconvenience, a variable in an equation that needs to be eliminated. Rage came then, so hot and total that Amara couldn't breathe. She put her hand on her belly, feeling her daughter kick, feeling the life that someone wanted to extinguish. I will kill him myself. The words came out calm. Too calm. They didn't sound like her. Mrs. Park nodded slowly. I understand that feeling. I've lived with it for 15 years. But killing him won't protect your daughter. It will destroy everything. You'll be arrested, Jae-hoon will be alone, and Di-young's allies will still be free to pursue whatever revenge they want against your family. Then what do? We use what I've built. We expose him so completely, so publicly, that there's nowhere for him to hide. We do it in a way that protects the company, protects the workers, protects Korea's interests. And we do it within the next. Mrs. Park checked her watch. 54 hours. Why 54 hours? Because that's when the Board of Park Industries holds its emergency session. Di-young has called for a vote, removal of Jae-hoon from all positions, pending the resolution of the criminal investigation he engineered. If that vote passes, your husband loses everything. And once he loses his position, he has no legal standing to challenge what happens next. 54 hours, 2 days and change, to take down a man who had been planning this for over 15 years. Do we even start? We start with Jae-hoon. Mrs. Park pulled out her phone. He's landing in San Francisco in approximately 20 minutes. Di-young has people waiting for him, lawyers mostly, with documents designed to seem helpful. Emergency powers of attorney, asset protection measures, papers that, if signed, would give Di-young everything he needs. Jae-hoon wouldn't sign anything without understanding it. What if they told him you were in? If they told him signing was the only way to protect you and the baby? My son is smart, Amara, but he loves you in a way that makes him vulnerable. They know this. They're counting on it. Then we need to warn him. Need to do more than warn him. We need to intercept him. Get him away from whoever Di-young has sent before they can manipulate him. Mrs. Park began typing rapidly. I have people in San Francisco, but they're not in position yet. The flight was diverted only an hour ago. We weren't expecting this move. Then send me. The words came out before Amara had consciously decided to say them. Mrs. Park looked up. What? Send me. I'm his wife. If he sees me, he'll trust me. He'll listen. He won't sign anything if I'm standing right there telling him not to. You're 8 months pregnant. You just got off a 14-hour flight. You've been threatened, harassed, and learned that your entire world is under attack. And you want to fly to San Francisco tonight? I want to protect my husband and my daughter, whatever that takes. Mrs. Park studied her for a long moment. Something shifted in her expression, something that looked almost like respect. There's a private airfield 15 minutes from here. I have a plane waiting. It was supposed to take me back to Seoul, but plans change. She paused. If you do this, you'll be walking into a situation we don't fully control. There may be confrontation. There may be danger. I can send security with you, but I can't guarantee. I don't need guarantees. I need my husband. Decision was made. Within 10 minutes, they were back in the car, speeding toward an airfield that regular maps didn't show. Kang drove even faster than before, taking curves that made Amara grip the door handle. There's something else you should know, Mrs. Park said as they drove. The board meeting in 54 hours isn't just about removing Jae-hoon. It's about approving a merger. Merger? Park Industries with Hana Financial Group. Amara's head snapped toward her mother-in-law. Hana, that's Choi Sung-jin's company, the man from the plane. Family's company. Yes, the merger has been in negotiation for months, always framed as a partnership that would benefit both organizations. In reality, it's a takeover disguised as collaboration. If it goes through, Di-young gets a seat on the combined board, access to Park Industries' technology and patents, and the ability to slowly dilute the Park family's control until we own nothing. The Choi family, they know about this. They know what Di-young is doing. They know enough. They're not orchestrating it, but they're benefiting from it. They've agreed to support Di-young's vision in exchange for favorable merger terms. It's why Choi Sung-jin was on your flight. He was supposed to be meeting with Di-young in Los Angeles tonight, finalizing details. Supposed to be. His reputation is currently in ruins. The videos from the plane have been shared hundreds of thousands of times. His family is scrambling to do damage control. He's no longer a reliable partner. Amara remembered Sung-jin's face during the flight, the way it had crumbled as he scrolled through his phone, watching his world collapse. You did that deliberately. You let the videos spread on purpose. I accelerated their spread. There's a difference. Mrs. Park allowed herself a thin smile. The technology sector has long memories and strong opinions about public behavior. No one wants to merge with a company whose executives get caught on camera harassing pregnant women. The Choi family will be looking for ways to distance themselves from this entire arrangement. You're using him, using what happened on the plane as a weapon. I'm using everything as a weapon. Every resource, every incident, every opportunity. When you've been at war for 15 years, you learn not to waste ammunition. The airfield appeared ahead, a small facility, minimal lighting, a single runway that seemed to emerge from the darkness. One more thing, Mrs. Park said as the car slowed. When you reach Jae-hoon, he's going to have questions. About me, about why I stayed away, about why I let him suffer. You can tell him anything I've told you tonight. But there's one thing I need you to explain specifically. What's that? Tell him his father's last words, the real ones. Amara froze. What do you mean? The official story is that my husband died on the way to the hospital, unconscious, never able to speak. That's what we told the press, what we told the family, what we told Jae-hoon. Mrs. Park's voice cracked. It's a lie. He was conscious for almost 20 minutes in the ambulance, fighting for every breath. And he spent those 20 minutes saying one thing over and over. What did he say? Protect the children. Not the company, not the legacy, not his name. Protect the children. He knew somehow. He knew what his brother was capable of. He knew this day would come. Tears streaked down Mrs. Park's face, the first Amara had seen from her. Tell Jae-hoon that his father's final thought was of him. Tell him that everything I've done, everything, has been in service of that dying wish. And tell him I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry he had to carry the weight of believing his mother had abandoned him. Car stopped. A small jet waited on the runway, engines already warming. Go, Mrs. Park said. Save my son, save your husband. And when you've done that, come back. We'll finish this together. Amara stepped out of the car, the night air cold against her skin. She walked toward the plane. And across the country, in San Francisco, Park Jae-hoon's flight touched down, delivering him into the hands of people who wanted to take everything he had. He stepped off the plane, expecting to find his wife waiting. Instead, he found his uncle. Park De-young smiled the smile of a man who had already won. Jae-hoon, he said warmly. Welcome to San Francisco. We need to talk about your wife. Jae-hoon's blood went cold at the sight of his uncle standing in the private terminal, flanked by men in dark suits who didn't look like lawyers. Uncle. He kept his voice steady. What are you doing here? Helping you, of course. There's been a situation. Your mother called me, frantic with worry. She's been tracking your wife's movements and... De-young shook his head with practiced concern. This isn't the place to discuss it. Come, I have a car waiting. We'll go somewhere private. Every instinct screamed danger, but this was his uncle, the man who had taught him to ride a bicycle, the man who had attended every graduation, every birthday, the man Jae-hoon had trusted his entire life. Need to call Amara? Of course, but her phone is off. We've been trying to reach her. That's part of the problem. Jae-hoon pulled out his phone. No signal. The private terminal must be blocking it somehow. What problem? What's happened to my wife? De-young placed a hand on his shoulder. Fatherly, warm, exactly the right gesture. It appears she's gotten herself into some legal trouble at Lax, an altercation on the plane. There's video everywhere. It doesn't look good, Jae-hoon. The American authorities are involved. That's not she was the victim. Some man tried to steal her seat. That's not how it's being portrayed in certain circles. The man she confronted has connections. Powerful connections. He's claiming she assaulted him, that the airline staff had to restrain her. That's a lie. I believe you. But lies become truth when repeated often enough, and right now, the wrong people are repeating this story very loudly. De-young steered him toward the exit. We need to get ahead of this. I have documents prepared, legal protections for Amara, for you, for the company. If we act quickly, we can contain the damage. Air outside the terminal was cold. Black sedan waited at the curb, back door open. Something was wrong. Jae-hoon had spent his career reading people, board members, competitors, potential partners. He knew when someone was manipulating him. He knew when words didn't match intentions. And right now, standing in the San Francisco night with his uncle's hand on his shoulder, he knew he was being played. I want to see the documents first. Of course, they're in the car. My lawyer will walk you through everything. I want to see them here. Now. Before I go anywhere. Something flickered across De-young's face, irritation quickly masked. Jae-hoon, every minute we waste is a minute the damage grows worse. Your wife is in custody, your mother is hysterical. The company stock is going to open down tomorrow morning if we don't. Then give me one document, one page. Let me understand what I'm signing before I get in that car. Silence stretched. Young's warm expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes hardened. Never questioned me before. Never had a reason to. You think you have one now? I think my pregnant wife is somewhere in Los Angeles, my phone isn't working, and my uncle showed up at an airport in a different city to intercept me. So yes, uncle, I think I have several reasons. Facade cracked, just for a second, just long enough for Jae-hoon to see what had always been hiding beneath. In the car, Jae-hoon. The warmth was gone. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. Or what? Or I'll make a phone call and your wife's legal troubles will become very real. Assault charges, immigration violations, questions about whether her visa was obtained through fraudulent means, questions that will drag on for months, maybe years, during which time she won't be able to leave America, won't be able to travel with you, won't be able to give birth in Korea where your child would have automatic citizenship. The threat hung in the air between them. Jae-hoon felt something inside him shift. Something that had been naive, trusting, hopeful, it died in that moment, replaced by something colder. Been planning this. Been protecting this family for 30 years. Protecting the legacy your father built. Protecting Korea's interests. And now, because you couldn't keep your ambitions in the appropriate circles, I'm forced to take measures I never wanted to take. This isn't about protection. This is about control. This is about you wanting what my father had, what you never could have as long as he was alive. Silence confirmed everything. Your father, Young said slowly, was a brilliant man, but he was also sentimental. He believed in family loyalty, in rewarding trust, in all the soft virtues that make men vulnerable. I believed in those things too, once, until I realized that sentiment would destroy everything we had built. So you killed him. Jae-hoon heard himself say the words, not quite believing them even as they left his mouth. Young didn't deny it. Your father was dying anyway. The heart disease was real, years of stress, years of carrying the weight of an empire. I simply accelerated the timeline, made sure he passed before he could make decisions that would have weakened us. Decisions like what? What was he going to do? He was going to bring in outside investors, diversify the shareholder base, reduce family control to below 50%. He called it modernization. I called it surrender. Betrayal burned through Jae-hoon like acid, and my mother, she knows about this. Your mother discovered it years ago. She's been quietly building a case against me ever since, gathering evidence, turning my people, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Young smiled thinly. She's impressive, your mother. Cold, patient. Exactly the kind of woman who should have been born into a family like ours. Was born into a family like ours. She married into it. Same thing in the end. Young gestured toward the car. Now, for the last time, get in. We'll drive somewhere private, you'll sign the documents I've prepared, and then you can go back to your wife with a story about how I helped you resolve a crisis. Everyone saves face. Everyone goes home. If I refuse, then I'll make sure your daughter never inherits a single share of Park Industries. I'll make sure your name is attached to crimes you didn't commit. I'll make sure your wife is deported, your mother's evidence disappears, and your entire life becomes a cautionary tale about what happens when family members forget their place. Jae-hoon looked at the car, at his uncle, at the men in dark suits who were definitely not lawyers. I want to make one phone call first. Call to verify that Amara is safe. That's all I'm asking. I said no. Then I'm not going anywhere with you. Young's jaw tightened. He nodded to the men behind him, they moved forward, and then a voice cut through the night, clear, strong, familiar. Step away from my husband. Everyone turned. Amara stood at the terminal entrance, flanked by two women in tactical gear. She was 8 months pregnant, exhausted from 2 flights in one day, and absolutely terrifying. Amara, Jae-hoon started. Know everything. Your mother told me. About your father, about the poison, about the fabricated evidence, about all of it. Young's face contorted. Your mother-in-law is a paranoid woman telling paranoid stories. There's no evidence of. There's 15 years of evidence. Documents, recordings, financial trails. And Amara checked her watch. 47 hours, it will all be presented to the Park Industries Board of Directors, along with a formal request for your removal and criminal referral to the Korean prosecutor's office. Men in dark suits hesitated. They looked at Young, waiting for instructions, uncertain how to proceed now that the situation had changed. You think you can threaten me with rumors and speculation? Young's voice rose. I have the support of the family council, the board majority, the government officials who depend on my cooperation. Whatever evidence you think you have. We have Dr. Yoon's deathbed confession. Recorded. Time-stamped. with specific details about the compound you used, the payments you made, the conversations you had planning my father-in-law's murder. Color drained from De-young's face. That recording doesn't exist. The doctor died before anyone could. He died 3 hours after making the recording. My mother-in-law held his hand while he confessed everything. She's held onto that recording for 10 years, waiting for exactly this moment. Ai-hoon stared at his wife, seeing her in an entirely new light. She had flown across the country, pregnant, to intercept him. She had walked into a confrontation with a man who had killed before and would kill again. She had done all of this without hesitation. How did you know where I'd be? Your mother has people everywhere. The flight diversion was tracked. The car that was waiting for you was identified. She knew exactly where they would try to intercept you. De-young laughed, a harsh, desperate sound. So she's been watching me for years, building her case, bidding her time. And you think that makes her trustworthy? You think she's doing this for your benefit? I think she's doing this because her husband's dying wish was to protect his children. And I think she's spent 15 years honoring that wish while letting her own son believe she had abandoned him. Something cracked in Jae-hoon's expression. Pain, relief, a grief so old it had calcified into something almost unrecognizable. She protected me. She protected all of us. In the only way she could. De-young shook his head. This doesn't end here. I have resources you can't imagine. Allies in every institution. The board will never believe. The board will believe documentary evidence of murder, bribery, and fraud. They'll believe it because it will be presented alongside testimony from 6 former executives who have already agreed to cooperate with prosecutors in exchange for immunity. Amara stepped forward, putting herself between De-young and her husband. Your allies are abandoning you as we speak. The evidence release was timed to coincide with this confrontation. Right now, right this minute, emails are being delivered to board members, journalists, government officials. By morning, there won't be a single person in Korea willing to be seen in the same room as you. Subscribe now if you're as captivated by this story as I am. There's so much more to come, and you won't want to miss how this ends. De-young's composure finally shattered. His face twisted with rage that had been building for decades. You think you've won? You think destroying me saves anything? The company will be in chaos, the stock will collapse, everything my brother built, everything I protected. You murdered your brother. You tried to kill your nephew's unborn child. You planted evidence designed to send innocent people to prison. Amara's voice was steady as stone. You protected nothing, you destroyed everything, and now you'll face consequences. Men in dark suits began backing away. Whatever they had been paid, it wasn't enough for this. De-young stood alone. Jae-hoon moved to stand beside his wife, taking her hand. Uncle, it's over. Over? The laugh was manic now. Nothing is over until I say it's over. I built this empire as much as your father did. I sacrificed everything, my ambitions, my pride, my desires to serve his vision. And what did I get? A position below my station, a share of profits instead of control. Eternal role of second in command to a man who was never my equal. So you killed him because you were jealous. I killed him because he was weak, because he was going to give away everything we had built to outsiders who didn't deserve it, because someone had to make the hard choices he couldn't make. De-young's eyes were wild. I am the one who made Park Industries what it is. I am the one who made the deals, who paid the bribes, who eliminated the obstacles. Your father just signed the paperwork. Now you'll sign paperwork of a different kind. Arrest warrants, extradition requests, prison intake forms. Sirens sounded in the distance, American sirens approaching fast. De-young looked around, finally understanding that there was no escape. His resources, his allies, his decades of planning, none of it would save him now. If I go down, I'll take everything with me. Every secret, every crime, every arrangement that kept the company running. I'll burn it all. You won't have the chance. Amara pulled out her phone and showed him a live video feed. This entire conversation has been streaming to your colleagues in Seoul. The ones who haven't received their evidence packets yet are watching it right now. They're watching you confess to murder. They're watching you threaten to destroy the company. They're making their decisions about where their loyalties lie. De-young stared at the phone, at the faces of board members and executives watching from their homes and offices. At the end of everything he had built his life around. The police cars arrived. Officers emerged, weapons drawn, shouting commands that seemed to come from very far away. Park De-young, murderer, manipulator, architect of empires, fell to his knees on the cold pavement. And Jae-hoon held his wife, felt his daughter kick against his palm, and finally allowed himself to believe they might survive this. The aftermath took weeks to fully unfold. Di-young was arrested, extradited to South Korea, and charged with murder, fraud, and a dozen other crimes. His trial would dominate headlines for years. The fabricated evidence against Jae-hoon was discredited. The criminal investigation was dropped. The board meeting that was supposed to destroy him instead resulted in his elevation to chairman of Park Industries with his mother's full support. Mrs. Park flew to Los Angeles for her granddaughter's birth. She stood in the hospital room, holding the tiny girl whose existence had triggered an empire's collapse, and she wept without shame. "She has your nose," she told Amara, "and Jae-hoon's stubbornness. You can see it in her eyes." "What should we name her?" Mrs. Park thought for a moment. In Korean tradition, grandparents often have naming rights. But this child is both Korean and American, both Park and Okonkwo. She should have a name that honors both. They settled on Ava Sujin Park. Ava for Amara's grandmother, who had raised her in Chicago. Sujin for Jae-hoon's grandmother, who had survived the Korean War and built the foundation on which their family stood. Choi Sung-jin, the man from the plane, lost everything within 2 months. His family stripped him of his position. His wife filed for divorce. His reputation became a case study in how quickly power could evaporate. The last anyone heard, he was working at a mid-level financial firm in a city that didn't know his name, starting over with nothing. Some said it was justice. Others said it was mercy. Amara thought it was simply consequence, the natural result of treating people like obstacles instead of human beings. A year after Ava's birth, Amara and Jae-hoon stood on the deck of their home in Malibu, the same estate where Mrs. Park had revealed the truth that night. They had made it their own, filling it with new photographs that included everyone. Even Mrs. Park smiled in some of them. "She's walking," Jae-hoon said, watching their daughter toddle across the grass, chasing a butterfly that stayed just out of reach. "Actually walking. Running soon. Then we'll really be in trouble." "She's going to change the world, isn't she?" Amara watched her daughter. This impossible child, born of 2 continents, threatened before she took her first breath, surviving because of the fierce love of people who refused to let her be erased. She already has. Sunset over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. And somewhere in Seoul, in an office overlooking the city, Mrs. Park sat alone, looking at a photograph of her husband. "I protected them," she whispered, "just like you asked." "All of them?" She touched the frame gently. Then she turned back to her work, building the empire her granddaughter would someday inherit, making sure it was worthy of the child who had survived so much to claim it. "Before I go, I want you to take a moment. If this story touched you, if it made you think about family, about love, about the lengths we go to protect the people who matter, please subscribe to this channel and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below telling me the biggest lesson this story taught you. I read every single comment, and your words help me understand what stories matter most to you. This is what happens when hate meets love stronger than fear. This is what happens when families choose each other, despite everything that tries to tear them apart. This is what happens when a pregnant woman refuses to give up her seat and discovers that she was never, not for one single moment, as alone as she believed. The flight attendant's voice